Your bare feet fly over the frozen ground, winter air burning your lungs as you race through the skeletal trees toward where a wakamoko. Behind you, the distant sound of English voices grows fainter, but ahead lies everything that matters. The warning you carry could save her life, could save everything. But will you reach Amanute in time? Suddenly you slow, your senses catching what your urgency almost missed. Fresh bear tracks in the soft earth beside the trail, and the unmistakable scent of a large animal nearby. You stop, making yourself known with a low, calm voice. I am here, Mother Bear. I mean no harm to you or your winter den. A massive, black bear emerges from behind a thicket of berry bushes, her dark eyes meeting yours across the small clearing. Your heart pounds, but you remember your grandmother's teachings. No sudden movements, no running. Bears can outrun and outclimb any human. You step slowly toward higher ground, speaking in the gentle, respectful tone your people have always used with the forest's powerful spirits. I travel with urgent purpose, Mother. Let me pass in peace. The bear rises briefly on her hind legs, testing your scent, reading your intentions. You make yourself appear larger, arms spread wide, but keep your voice calm and your movements deliberate. Never look directly into her eyes. That would be a challenge. After what feels like forever, she drops back to all fours and ambles away into the deeper woods, disappearing as quietly as she came. You breathe again, whispering thanks to the spirits that watch over both bears and children traveling alone in winter. But there's no time to waste. You burst through the tree line and see the familiar yehakins of your village, smoke rising peacefully into the gray December sky. Safe. For now. But this race through the forest, this desperate flight with secrets that could change everything, this is how it all began. How a friendship between two children became the hidden truth behind the most misunderstood story in American history. Good evening, fellow time travelers, and welcome back to Slumber Through Time, where history, faith, and imagination meet under the stars. I'm your host, and before we begin tonight's journey, please subscribe if you enjoy these immersive historical adventures, and let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see our global family of history lovers. Tonight you'll discover the true story of the girl the world knows as Pocahontas, but to her family and friends, she was simply Amanute. Pocahontas was just a playful nickname that meant Little Mischief Maker. Tonight, you'll meet her as Amonute, the real girl behind the legend. You'll see Amonute through the eyes of her secret friend, a young Powhatan girl who helped her navigate the most dangerous period of her life. This is the story Disney never told, about a real child caught between two worlds, not a romantic heroine, but a clever, brave girl trying to help her people survive. The story unfolds in the winter forests and river villages of what we now call Virginia, where the Powhatan people had thrived for generations before the first English ships appeared on the horizon. Together you'll witness the famous events of 1607 and 1608. Captain John Smith's capture, the mysterious ceremony he completely misunderstood, and the beginning of a cultural collision that would reshape a continent. But more than that, you'll discover what happens when two children choose friendship over fear, understanding over conflict. Can two opposing cultures coexist in the same land? Tonight, through the eyes of children who dared to believe they could, you'll discover the answer. But as you grow older and watch your people suffer, first Amanute's husband murdered by the English, then Amanute herself captured and dying far from home, you'll feel the burning need to join Opachancano's warriors and seek the revenge that grief demands. The question then becomes, what would your childhood friend want you to become? So now, settle into your most comfortable position. Perhaps adjust your pillows, pull up that blanket, maybe turn on a fan for some gentle background sound. Let the modern world fade away as we travel back over 4 centuries to a time when two vastly different peoples first encountered each other on the shores of the Chesapeake. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let yourself drift back. Back through time to become Amonute's dearest friend in the forests of Old Virginia. The morning air carries the scent of wood smoke and the sound of corn being ground into meal as you make your way through Werowocomoco. Winter has settled deep over the land, and the bark-walled houses stand warm against the December cold, holding the heat of family fires inside. But something feels different today. The adults speak in lower voices, their heads closer together than usual. You catch fragments as you pass. The pale captain, Opachankano, brings him. The Werowance decides. Then you see him. The English captain sits near the central fire, flanked by two of your father's warriors. His strange, pale skin looks almost blue in the winter light, and his curly brown hair frames a face tight with fear. His clothes are torn, muddy from his capture, and his eyes dart constantly around the village like a trapped animal. You've never seen one of the pale strangers up close before. He's smaller than you expected, his hands soft where yours are strong from daily work. When he speaks to his guards, his voice carries strange sounds your tongue has never shaped. The adoption ceremony, you hear one of the council members say, if the Amonute deems him worthy. And if not? Another voice asks. Then he returns to his people with a warning. An adoption ceremony. You've heard the elders speak of such things. Sacred rituals, where worthy strangers could be welcomed into the confederation as family. But you've never seen one. No child has. Child, come away from there. Your aunt's voice carries gentle authority. The Werowance counsels about important matters. This is not for young eyes. But as you're led away, you catch the English captain's eye for just a moment. The terror there is real and raw. He truly believes he's going to die. If only he knew. What the adults are planning isn't execution. It's the highest honor they can offer. You find Amanute by the river helping her aunts prepare rushes for mat weaving. Even in the winter cold, she works with the careful attention you've come to recognize, the way she does everything that matters to her people. But today, something's different. The way she sits, the quick looks toward the village center where the English captain waits. She knows about the ceremony, too. Amanute, you call softly, using her intimate name the way only family and close friends can. She looks up, and you see it right away. Worry in her dark eyes. At 10 years old, she already knows more about what the adults are planning than most children in smaller villages. Being the chief's daughter means carrying heavy thoughts. I saw the English captain, you say, settling beside her on the woven mat. Father says. She stops, glances toward her aunts, then makes her voice quieter. Father says this one is different, that he fought hard when Uncle's warriors caught him. That he's not like the other pale men. Will you be in the ceremony, you ask? Amonute shakes her head. I'm too little. The ceremony is for the council, for the men who will call him brother. She pauses, her fingers still working on the rushes. But Father wants me to watch, to understand how we can make peace instead of fighting. You look worried, you say. It's not a question. The English captain looks at us like... She searches for words. Like he's scared of us. How can someone become family when they think you're going to hurt them? Maybe the ceremony will show him we won't hurt him. You suggest. Amanute studies your face. Do you want to see it? The ceremony? Even though children aren't supposed to be there? You both know what she's really asking, not just to watch something secret, but to share it together. To help each other understand something the adults think you're too young to see. Yes, you whisper, I want to understand too. Her smile changes her whole face. For a moment, she's not the chief's daughter worrying about important things. She's just your friend, happy not to face something scary alone. Tonight then, she breathes. When the drums start, darkness settles over Werowocomoco like a familiar blanket. And with it comes the deep rhythm of the sacred drums. You and Amonute move like shadows between the Yahakans, careful to stay hidden from the adults making their way toward the central ceremonial space. From your hiding place behind a stack of winter corn, you can see everything. The Amanute, Amonute's father, sits with grave dignity on his raised platform, his grizzled hair adorned with the feathers that mark his authority over 30 tribes. The council members form a circle around the great fire, their faces painted with the sacred designs of the adoption ritual. And there, in the center of it all, sits Captain John Smith. His terror has only grown with the darkness. His pale hands shake as the warriors position him before the Amanute. And when the chanting begins, you see him close his eyes tight, as if expecting a killing blow. Watch. Amonute breathes beside you. See how Father holds himself. This is how a true werowance grants the highest honor. The silence that follows feels sacred, heavy with meaning. Your chief, Amonute's father, rises slowly, his voice carrying the authority of generations when he speaks. "English captain," he says, his words carefully chosen. "You have shown courage in battle, you have respected our strength. Now we offer you what we offer few strangers, the chance to become our son." You watch Smith's face as the translator works to make him understand. Confusion replaces terror but not comprehension. He hears the words but cannot grasp their meaning, that death was never the intention, that this ceremony, these sacred moments, are about creating family where none existed before. The adoption proceeds with ancient dignity. Sacred stones are placed around Smith, symbolizing the land that will be his. Corn is scattered, representing the abundance he will share. The Amanute places his own hand on Smith's head, speaking the words that make him werowance of Capahosic, brother to chiefs, son to the great confederation. But Smith understands none of it. You see him nod when the translator speaks. See him accept the gifts with the careful politeness of a man still expecting death. He participates in the ritual, but his eyes remain those of a prisoner, not a son being welcomed home. When it's over, when Smith is led away to spend the night as an honored guest before being escorted to his new lands, Amonute turns to you with troubled eyes. "He didn't understand," she whispers. "Even with the translator, even with all the sacred signs, he has no idea what Father just gave him." "Maybe understanding takes time," you whisper back. "Maybe he'll learn what it means to be family." But even as you say it, you both sense something has gone wrong. That this moment meant to bridge two worlds has instead shown how far apart they really are. Later, when the adults have gone back to their Yehakans and the village gets quiet, you and Amonute meet by the river. The water looks black under the winter stars, and your breath makes little clouds in the cold air. "I keep thinking about his face," Amonute says, her voice very quiet. "During the ceremony, he looked so lost." You nod, remembering, like nothing made sense to him. "Father wants me to visit the English place," she continues, picking up small stones and dropping them, "to help them understand our ways. But how can I help them when they can't even understand our ceremonies?" "Maybe that's why you should go," you suggest. "Maybe they need someone to help them see things right." Amanute looks at you with serious eyes. "Will you help me? When I have to go there. I don't want to face the English by myself, but I can't ask the grown-ups. They think I'm too little and need protecting." "I'll help," you promise, "whatever you need." She looks so relieved. This is what being friends means. Not just sharing secrets, but helping when things get scary. "Girls!" The voice is firm but not angry. One of the village aunts, come to find you. "Come away from the water. Children shouldn't be wandering around in the dark." As you're led back toward the warm Yehakans, Amanute squeezes your hand, once like making the promise again. You don't know it yet, but this promise will change everything. In the months ahead, when Amonute starts going to the hungry English settlement, when she tries to stop fighting between your peoples, you'll be her secret helper, the friend who stands with her when two worlds can't understand each other. Captain Smith will go back to Jamestown tomorrow, carrying stories that will get bigger and stranger every time he tells them. Years later, he'll write about a beautiful Indian princess who threw herself on him to save his life, a story that sounds nothing like the sacred ceremony you saw tonight. But you and Amanute know what really happened. You've seen what it looks like when two peoples try to become family, even when they don't understand each other. And in the hard months coming, as winter becomes spring and the English get more desperate for food, that truth will matter more than any of the adults know. Because sometimes, the bridge between worlds can only be built by people young enough to believe it can work. Whatever happens next, you'll face it together. Two children standing where history is being made, ready to see worlds meet and change everything, hoping that friendship and understanding will be stronger than the things that push people apart. The visitors have come, and with them a future no one can imagine. The seasons have turned since that winter night when you witnessed the adoption ceremony. Spring has brought new growth to the forest, but with it, new complications that neither you nor Amonute could have foreseen. Captain Smith has returned to Jamestown carrying stories that grow more elaborate with each telling. What you saw as a sacred ritual of family making, he now describes as a dramatic rescue by a beautiful Indian princess who threw herself upon him to save his life. The truth you and Amanute share feels more precious and more dangerous with each passing day. You watch from the edge of the village as another delegation of English colonists approaches Werowocomoco. Their faces are gaunt, their clothes hanging loose on frames weakened by months of poor diet. Behind them walks Captain Smith, his step confident in a way that makes your stomach tighten with worry. "Child, you will stay with the other young ones today." Your aunt's firm hand guides you toward the group of children being deliberately kept away from the diplomatic proceedings. These are matters for adults. But you've learned to move quietly, to listen carefully, to be present without being seen. As the adults gather for formal negotiations, you find a spot behind the grain storage where you can observe everything. Amonute stands beside her father with the composure expected of a chief's daughter. At 11 years old, she carries herself with dignity that would be impressive in someone twice her age. But you know her well enough now to see the tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers worry at the edge of her deerskin dress. "Great Chief," Captain Smith speaks through his translator, but his eyes never leave Amonute's face. "We come seeking your continued generosity for our struggling settlement. Your daughter's intervention, in my time of need, showed us the compassion of your people." The translator works to convey Smith's words, but you can see Chief Powhatan's slight frown. The sacred adoption ceremony that made Smith family is being described as something else entirely, something that places Amonute at the center of a story she never participated in. "The English captain speaks strangely of our customs," your father murmurs to another council member, quietly enough that the visitors cannot hear. Amonute glances toward where she knows you're hiding, a quick flick of her eyes that speaks volumes. She needs someone who understands the truth, someone who witnessed what really happened that night. But with all the adults watching, all you can do is stay hidden and hope she feels your support across the distance. When the English delegation finally leaves with promises of corn for their survival, Amonute remains standing beside her father, but you can see the exhaustion in her small frame. The burden of being misunderstood, of carrying secrets about what really happened, is taking its toll. That evening, you find your chance. The moon reflects silver on the York River as you and Amanute meet at your secret place among the cattails. It's become your ritual, these hidden conversations where you can speak freely about things too complex and dangerous for adult ears. A great blue heron stands motionless in the shallows nearby, and there's something comforting about her patient presence, like having a wise elder watching over your friendship. "He keeps looking at me like..." Amanute stops, making a face. "Like when my little cousin wants something but won't ask." You settle beside her on the woven mat you've hidden here for these meetings. But what does he want? "I don't know." The frustration in her voice sounds exactly like what it is, an 11-year-old girl trying to understand adult behavior that makes no sense. The translator said the words. Everyone saw the ceremony. Why does he think it means something different? The heron suddenly strikes, emerging with a silver fish that gleams in the moonlight. Both of you smile. There's something hopeful about witnessing her quiet success. Maybe he doesn't understand our ways? Amonute picks up a handful of river stones, letting them fall through her fingers one by one. Father says I have to be nice to the English, help keep peace. But Captain Smith keeps acting strange, and I don't know what he wants. You're not by yourself, you remind her. I was there that night. I saw what really happened. But you can't tell anyone. She turns to look at you, worried. If the adults knew we were watching, if they found out we meet like this, the thought makes your stomach hurt. Children who disobey, who listen to adult secrets, who sneak around at night. The punishments could keep you apart forever. Father says the English are like babies in our land. Amonute continues. They don't know how to find food or stay warm or anything. He thinks if we help them, maybe they won't try to hurt us. You don't have an answer. Your parents have never talked about problems like this. The adults you know follow rules that everyone understands. Do things the way they've always been done. This is something new and confusing. Maybe we figure it out together, you say. Maybe that's what friends do and the grown-ups don't understand either. Amonute reaches for your hand. Promise me something. What? Promise that you'll help me remember what really happened that night, when everyone else forgets or tells it wrong. Promise you'll help me remember the truth. I promise. The sound of footsteps in the distance sends you both scrambling to hide the evidence of your meeting. But as you slip back toward the village, you know your friendship has become something important, like having someone who believes you when everyone else seems confused. 2 weeks later, the crisis arrives in a way that changes everything. You're helping your mother prepare corn cakes when you hear voices at the village edge. More English voices than you've ever heard at once. When you look toward the forest path, your stomach drops. A large group of English colonists approaches Wakamoko, and even from far away you can see something is very wrong. Some stumble as they walk. Others lean on each other for support. Their clothes hang loose on bodies that look like they're shrinking. When they get closer, you can see their faces, hollow cheeks, dark circles under their eyes, skin that looks gray instead of the pink-white you remember. 40 left, you hear one of the council members tell your father quietly. Out of more than 100 who came to their settlement. They're not asking for help anymore, they're asking to live. You find a spot where you can see everything while staying close enough to Amonute to help if needed. She stands beside her father with the careful posture she's learned for important meetings, but you can see the worry in the way she holds her hands. The English spokesman, not Smith this time, but someone who looks even more desperate, speaks through the translator in a voice that shakes. Great Chief, we come to you not as traders, but as family in need. Your daughter showed us that there can be brotherhood between our peoples. We hope that brotherhood means sharing food when brothers are starving. You watch the translator struggle with words that don't quite work in either language. Brotherhood doesn't mean the same thing to the Powhatan as it does to the English. Family obligations exist, but they follow rules these English don't understand. Chief Powhatan's voice carries the careful weight of a leader protecting his own people. The season has been hard for all. Our stores are not endless. We can share some, but... Captain Smith steps forward, breaking the polite order of the meeting. Surely the bonds created when the princess saved my life create special obligations. She herself showed us the compassion of your people. The translator looks confused, trying to explain concepts that don't exist in Powhatan politics. You see Amonute's face change as she realizes what's happening. Smith is using the false story to claim she owes them something special. "The captain speaks strangely of our customs," Chief Powhatan says carefully, but you can see he's trying to understand what Smith means. You watch Amanute's shoulders get tighter as the English continue talking about her like she made them promises she never made. Her father starts to look between her and the desperate English, and you realize he's trying to figure out what his daughter might have committed them to. "We're not asking for gifts," another English voice calls out. "We're asking Princess Pocahontas to honor the bond she created when she chose to save English lives." Now you understand the trap. The English think Amanute personally decided to help them. They think she made some kind of promise. They're not just asking Chief Powhatan for food. They're asking Amanute to keep promises she never made. You see her face go pale as she realizes the same thing. She's not just her father's daughter helping with diplomacy anymore. In their minds, she's personally responsible for whether they live or die. As the English disappear into the forest, you see Amonute still standing beside her father. But she looks smaller somehow. Like the weight of other people's expectations is pushing her down. That evening you find her sitting alone behind her family's yehakin, staring at nothing. "They think it's all because of me," she says without looking up when you sit beside her. "But it's not. I know that, you know that, but they don't know that." She picks at the ground with a stick. "Father keeps asking me what I said to them, what I did that made them think I owe them something special. But I can't tell him about the ceremony, about what Captain Smith really thinks happened." You can see the impossible position she's in. She can't explain the misunderstanding without revealing that you both witnessed the adoption ritual. But without explaining it, she can't make the false expectations go away. "What if we found a way to show them the truth," you suggest? Not telling about the ceremony, but showing them that you're just a regular person helping because your father says to. Amonute looks at you with hope for the first time since the English left. "You think that would work?" "I don't know, but maybe we can try. Together." You don't have an answer yet, but you can see that just having someone who believes her story, someone willing to help solve the problem instead of just watching it happen, makes her feel less alone. "We'll figure it out," you promise. That's what friends do. "He's leaving." Amanute's voice sounds mixed up, happy and worried and maybe a little sad all at once. You're both sitting by the water again, watching the moon make ripples, but tonight feels different, like something ending. "Captain Smith?" you ask, though you already know. "Something bad happened. Gunpowder exploded when he was cleaning his weapon. Father says he'll live, but he needs help the English can't give him. They're sending him across the big water to his home." You think about this. Smith leaving should make everything better. No more weird looks. No more confusion. No more pressure on Amanute to be something she's not. But it doesn't feel better. It feels unfinished. "Did he talk to you before leaving?" Amanute picks up a smooth river stone, rolling it between her palms. "That's the strange part. He asked Father for time alone with me, to say goodbye." "What did he say?" "He said he'd never forget what I did for him. That he'd tell everyone in his homeland about the Indian princess who saved his life." She looks at you, confused. "Then he said something about how I was like a daughter to him now, because of what happened that night." A daughter. He kept calling me child and saying he hoped Father would remember their friendship and that he hoped our peoples would stay friends too. She drops the stone into the water with a little splash, but the way he said it was still strange, like he thought I chose to help him instead of just being there when Father made him family. "Did you tell your father?" "I tried to, but how do I explain that Captain Smith still doesn't understand what the ceremony meant? That he thinks I made some personal choice to save him?" She picks up another stone. Father just nodded and said the English think differently about many things. You watch the ripples spread out and disappear. Someday Amonute will be old enough to think about marriage. Her father will talk to other chiefs, make plans that help their people, choose someone who makes sense. But that's grown-up stuff, following grown-up rules. Smith's idea doesn't fit any of that. It's based on a story that isn't true, asking for things that don't exist. Maybe it's good he's leaving, you say. Maybe, but Amonute doesn't sound sure. The other English still believe his story, though. They still look at me like I'm special to them, like I love them more than my own people. Now that he's gone, they might want even more from me. You both know she's right. Smith leaving doesn't fix the story he told, doesn't change what people believe, doesn't make the confusion go away. What will you do, you ask? What Father tells me to do. Help keep peace. Try to help both sides understand each other. She looks at you with eyes that seem older than they should be. But I need your help more now. You're the only one who knows what really happened that night. You're the only one who can help me remember who I really am when everyone else wants me to be someone different. You hear the village settling down for sleep in the distance. Normal sounds, peaceful sounds. But underneath, you feel like something big is coming that will change everything. There's something else, Amonute says quietly. Something Father told me after Smith left. What? The English aren't getting stronger. Even with our help, they're barely staying alive. Father thinks maybe they won't last much longer here, that maybe the problem will just go away. But you don't think so? No, I think more will come. More ships, more people, and they'll all hear Smith's story about the Indian princess who saved English lives, and they'll expect me to do it again. She looks out toward the darkness where the English settlement struggles. I think this is just the beginning. A red-tailed hawk circles overhead, its wings catching the moonlight as it rides the night thermals with effortless grace. Both of you pause to watch its patient flight. There's something mesmerizing about the way it moves through the darkness, seeing everything from above with eyes that can spot the smallest movement far below. Even the hawk knows something's changing, Amonute whispers, following its path across the star-filled sky. Something about her words makes you shiver, though you don't know why. But tonight, you're still just friends by a river, sharing secrets and hoping tomorrow will be easier. 14 years later, you stand by the same river where you made that childhood promise to Amonute. But now, you hold your own daughter close to your chest, feeling her small body shake with each of your silent sobs. They killed her. Who? Your dearest friend, the girl who taught you that friendship could cross any divide, who trusted you with her deepest fears, who died alone in a foreign land rather than abandon the children they forced on her, is gone. Dead at 21 in England, where they paraded her like a prize before letting disease and heartbreak consume her. And Kocoum, sweet, protective Kocoum, who married her when she came of age, who loved her truly, who fought to save her when the English kidnapped her. They put a musket ball through his chest and threw his body in the river like refuse. Your daughter stirs in your arms and you see Amonute's eyes looking back at you. The same trust, the same innocence, the same belief that the world will protect what matters most. She whispers, "Why are you crying?" You cannot tell her that tomorrow, when Opechancanough strikes every English settlement from the James River to the Potomac, you have promised to guide his warriors to the hidden places where English families think they are safe. Cannot tell her that 14 years of watching your people die, your friend murdered, your brother-in-law butchered, has filled your heart with a rage that burns like fever. Cannot tell her that when the sun rises, you will help orchestrate the deaths of men, women, and children who look just like the ones who killed everyone you loved. A lone wolf steps from the tree line across the river, its yellow eyes finding yours in the moonlight. For a long moment you stare at each other, predator recognizing predator, mother acknowledging mother. It doesn't retreat from your gaze and you don't look away. You understand each other perfectly. Sometimes love demands becoming something dangerous. The wolf turns and disappears back into the forest, leaving only the memory of that moment of recognition. Tomorrow, you will be what your daughter needs you to be. Tonight, you grieve for the person you used to be. Just remembering someone I lost, little one, you whisper, pressing your face into her hair that smells like wood smoke and river water and innocence. But first, before you cross that line tomorrow, Before you help unleash a war that will drown Virginia in blood, you need to understand exactly how the dream of peace became this nightmare of revenge. How two peoples who could have been family chose to become enemies. How the bridge you and tried to build with childhood friendship collapsed into this chasm of grief and rage. You need to remember how it all went wrong, because tomorrow your daughter's future depends on the choice you make with Pocahontas' war party. And the weight of that choice feels heavier than anything two children by a river could ever have imagined. Before you can choose whether to ride with Pocahontas tomorrow, you need to understand how the dream of peace became this nightmare of war. The choice ahead isn't just about revenge for Amanute's death. It's about the last chance for your people's survival. But to make that choice wisely, you need to understand the full truth about what went wrong. Let's step away from your story for a moment and explore the world that shaped these impossible choices. Imagine waking up tomorrow with no electricity, no running water, no grocery stores, and no modern medicine. Every calorie you eat, every piece of clothing you wear, every medicine that keeps you alive, you have to make by hand, or you die. That was just Tuesday for Amonute and her people. Here's something that might shock you. The daily routine that kept a Powhatan child alive would literally kill most modern people within a week. Winter mornings began before dawn with the kind of ritual that would send most of us to the emergency room. While we reach for coffee and check our phones, Powhatan children began each day by plunging into the icy York River. Not a quick splash, a full-body immersion in water so cold it would cause hypothermia in most modern people. But for them, this daily shock treatment built the kind of physical resilience that let them thrive in conditions that would destroy us. Fire was life itself, not something you flicked on with a switch, but a living thing that required constant attention. Let your fire die on a winter night, and you might not see morning. Children as young as 6 learned to tend embers through the night, to read the subtle signs that meant the difference between warmth and death. They could start fire with nothing but sticks and practice, create heat from materials we'd walk past without noticing. Every bite of food was earned through knowledge that took decades to master. While we grabbed snacks from the pantry, Powhatan children learned to identify dozens of edible plants, to know which roots were safe in spring but poisonous in fall, to track animals through forests using signs most of us couldn't see if our lives depended on it. They knew exactly when different foods would be available throughout the year, how to preserve meat without refrigeration, how to find nutrition in bark and roots when other food was scarce. Their medicine cabinet was the entire forest. No antibiotics, no painkillers, no hospitals. Just intimate knowledge of which plants could heal wounds, reduce fever, ease pain, or fight infection. A Powhatan mother knew dozens of medicinal plants and exactly how to prepare them. Get the dose wrong, use the wrong part of the plant, harvest at the wrong season, and you could kill instead of cure. They made everything from scratch. Every piece of clothing, every tool, every container, every weapon. They transformed raw materials into everything needed for a sophisticated life, using nothing but their hands, simple tools, and knowledge passed down through generations. They could take a tree and turn it into a canoe that would last for years. They could transform animal hides into clothing so well made that English colonists abandoned their European clothes in favor of native designs. And they did all of this while maintaining a complex society with art, music, politics, religion, education, and sophisticated social relationships. This wasn't just survival. This was a rich, full civilization that happened to require skills we can't even imagine. When Amonute cartwheeled by the river, when she laughed with her friends, when she helped her father with diplomatic decisions, she was living a life that required more daily competence and physical capability than most of us will develop in a lifetime. That's the world the English stumbled into. That's the standard of living they had to measure up to. They didn't even come close. Now let's talk about everything you think you know about Pocahontas, and why almost all of it is fiction. The real story is so much more remarkable than the Disney version, but it's also more complicated and more tragic. Here's what actually happened when historians compared John Smith's different accounts and listened to what the Mattaponi tribe had preserved in their oral traditions. First, the rescue that never happened. In 1608, John Smith wrote about his capture by Opachancanoughs and his time at Werowocomoco. He mentioned meeting Chief Powhatan and his daughter, but there's no dramatic rescue, no life-or-death moment, no beautiful princess throwing herself on him to save his life. That story doesn't appear until 1624, 7 years after Pocahontas died, when Smith was writing for English audiences who loved dramatic tales of adventure and romance. What really happened was an adoption ceremony. The Mattaponi oral tradition explains that Chief Powhatan was incorporating Smith into the confederacy, making him a werowance of Capahosic, essentially adopting him as a son. This was a political strategy. Keep the English leader close and under Powhatan control. Pocahontas wasn't saving Smith from death. She wasn't even part of the ceremony in the way Smith later claimed. Second, the age problem that makes the whole romance impossible. When Smith arrived in 1607, Pocahontas was about 10 to 12 years old. Smith was 27. The idea of romance between them wasn't just inappropriate, it was impossible. Smith himself referred to her as child in his letters and described their relationship in father-daughter terms. The romantic elements were added later, probably to make the story more appealing to English readers who expected love stories in their adventure tales. Third, the real Pocahontas was far more interesting than Disney's version. Her name wasn't actually Pocahontas. That was just a nickname meaning playful one. Her real names were Amanute and Matawaka. She was a political figure from childhood, trained in diplomacy, capable of understanding complex negotiations between cultures. She spoke multiple languages, understood both Powhatan and English political systems, and served as a crucial bridge between worlds. She was also, according to Mattaponi tradition, married to a Powhatan man named Cocoam before she was kidnapped by the English in 1613. Fourth, the kidnapping that changed everything. In 1613, when Pocahontas was about 17, the English kidnapped her and held her for ransom. During her captivity, she was forced to convert to Christianity, forced to marry John Rolfe, and forced to abandon her Powhatan identity. According to Mattaponi oral tradition, Cocoam was murdered when he tried to rescue her. The Disney story of love and choice becomes a story of violence and coercion. Fifth, the trip to England that killed her. The London Company brought Pocahontas to England in 1616 as a publicity stunt, living proof that savage Native Americans could be civilized and converted. They paraded her around London society as an exotic curiosity, a princess from the New World. She was treated well in some ways, but she was also isolated from everything and everyone she loved, forced to perform a role that denied her true identity. She died in England in March 1617 at about 21 years old, probably from disease but possibly from poisoning, according to Mattaponi tradition. She never saw her homeland again. Her young son Thomas was left in England, not returning to Virginia until he was an adult. The real story reveals something far more important than a love story. It shows how cultural misunderstanding, political manipulation, and the colonial desire for land and power destroyed individual lives and entire civilizations. Pocahontas became a symbol used by both sides, by the English to justify colonization, by later Americans to romanticize the conquest of native peoples. But she was a real person, a child who cartwheeled by the river, a young woman who tried to build bridges between worlds, a mother who died far from home, having lost everything she loved. That's the woman whose memory is worth honoring. Not the Disney princess, but the real person whose courage and tragedy tell us something true about what happened when two worlds collided. Here's something that might shock you. When the English arrived in Virginia, they weren't encountering scattered tribes or primitive villages. They were challenging a sophisticated confederacy that controlled more territory than most European kingdoms and commanded military resources that could have crushed the tiny Jamestown settlement without breaking a sweat. The Powhatan Confederacy was a genuine superpower that chose diplomacy over destruction, a choice that ultimately doomed them. The scale was massive. Chief Powhatan ruled 30 tribes spread across an area larger than some European countries. The Confederacy included about 15,000 people living in more than 160 villages, connected by waterways, trade routes, and political alliances that had been carefully built over generations. This wasn't a loose collection of independent groups. It was a coordinated political entity with centralized leadership, tribute systems, and the ability to mobilize thousands of warriors for coordinated military action. The political structure was sophisticated. Chief Powhatan, whose real name was Wahunsinacow, ruled through a complex system of inherited authority and appointed leaders. Each tribe had its own werawants, chief, but all were bound to the central authority through carefully negotiated agreements. The Confederacy had protocols for everything: how tribute flowed from outlying tribes to the center, how disputes between tribes were resolved, how military campaigns were planned and executed, how diplomacy was conducted with outside groups. The military capability was overwhelming. When English ships first appeared, Powhatan could have fielded thousands of warriors armed with bows that were more accurate than English muskets and capable of firing arrows faster than the colonists could reload. Powhatan warriors knew every stream, every trail, every hiding place in their territory. They could appear anywhere, strike fast, and disappear before the English even knew they were under attack. The colonists were entirely dependent on Powhatan goodwill for their survival. The economic system was complex and effective. The Confederacy managed resources across a vast territory, with specialized production in different regions feeding into trade networks that distributed goods throughout the territory and beyond. They had surplus agricultural production, controlled access to valuable resources like copper and pearls, and maintained trade relationships with tribes hundreds of miles away. Their economy was sustainable, renewable, and had been functioning successfully for generations. The technological capabilities were impressive. They built structures that lasted for decades, created transportation systems that moved people and goods efficiently across their territory, and developed agricultural techniques that sustained large populations without depleting the land. Their medical knowledge was sophisticated enough that many English colonists sought out native healers when European treatments failed. So why didn't they just destroy the English settlement? The Chief Powhatan made a strategic calculation that proved tragically wrong. Rather than crushing the tiny, struggling colony, he decided to try controlling it. He could see that the English had useful technologies, metal tools, firearms, new crops, that might benefit his people if properly managed. He thought he could incorporate them into his confederacy the way he had incorporated other groups, making them vassals who would provide tribute and military service while remaining under his control. The adoption ceremony with John Smith was part of this strategy. By making Smith a werawance of Capahosic, Powhatan was trying to bind the English into his political system. The ongoing food aid to the starving colonists wasn't just charity. It was the kind of support a paramount chief provides to subordinate groups in his confederacy. The tragic irony is that Powhatan's strength made him generous, and his generosity made him vulnerable. He could afford to help the struggling English because his confederacy was so powerful and successful. He didn't see them as a threat because they seemed so weak, so dependent, so obviously inferior in every practical skill that mattered for survival in Virginia. What he couldn't have anticipated was what was coming behind them. Not just a few hundred struggling colonists, but eventually millions of Europeans with an insatiable hunger for land and no respect for the political structures that had made the Powhatan Confederacy possible. By the time it became clear that the English couldn't be controlled or incorporated, they had grown too strong to be easily destroyed. The window for crushing them had closed, and the superpower that could have stopped European colonization had been undone by its own mercy. Here's the most tragic irony in American history. Every act of kindness the Powhatan people showed the English colonists made their own destruction more inevitable. The very generosity that kept Jamestown alive was sealing the fate of the civilization that provided it. This is the story of how helping your enemies survive becomes the strategy that dooms you. The English should have died. Let's be completely clear about this. Without Powhatan aid, the Jamestown colony would have collapsed within months. The English arrived with no idea how to find food in Virginia, no understanding of the climate, no knowledge of what plants were safe to eat or how to survive the winters. They chose a terrible location, a swampy area with bad water that bred disease. They brought the wrong crops, the wrong tools, the wrong expectations. During the starving time winter of 1609-1610, the colonists resorted to eating leather, rats, and, in some documented cases, each other. When supply ships arrived in spring, they found only 60 survivors out of 500 colonists. The survivors were preparing to abandon the settlement and return to England when new supplies and colonists arrived at the last possible moment. Every gift of food was a gift of time to grow stronger. When Pocahontas brought corn to the starving colonists, when Chief Powhatan ordered his tribes to trade food for English tools, when Powhatan warriors taught English hunters where to find game, all of this kept the colony alive long enough for more ships to arrive from England. Each act of mercy gave the English more time to figure out how to survive, more time to establish permanent settlements, more time to send word back to England that colonization was possible. The English population grew while Powhatan numbers declined. Disease traveled both ways across the cultural divide, but it hit native populations much harder. European diseases like smallpox, measles, and typhus killed enormous numbers of Powhatan people who had no immunity to these new illnesses. Meanwhile, English immigration continued. Every ship brought more colonists, and now they were arriving to an established colony instead of a failing experiment. English agriculture began to succeed, with Powhatan knowledge. The colonists learned to grow tobacco using techniques adapted from native methods. Tobacco became so profitable that it justified massive expansion of English settlements. Ironically, the crop that made Virginia economically viable was developed using knowledge that native peoples shared with their future destroyers. The strategic balance shifted invisibly. In 1607, Chief Powhatan controlled a superpower, and the English were barely surviving refugees. By 1620, English settlements had spread throughout Powhatan territory, English population was growing rapidly, and the Confederacy was weakened by disease and the disruption of traditional economic patterns. The choice was no longer whether to destroy the English. Opachancanno saw what his brother couldn't. By 1620, when Chief Powhatan died and Opachancanno took control, the new leader understood that kindness had been a fatal mistake. The English hadn't become vassals or allies. They had become an invasive species that would keep expanding until nothing else could survive. The 1622 attacks weren't revenge for individual wrongs, though there were plenty of those. They were a last-chance attempt to destroy the English settlements before they became unstoppable. The window for easy victory had already closed. In 1607, a few hundred Powhatan warriors could have wiped out the Jamestown settlement in an afternoon. By 1622, the English had multiple fortified settlements, better weapons, and thousands of colonists. The coordinated attacks of March 22, 1622, killed about 350 English colonists, a devastating blow, but no longer enough to end the colonial presence. The tragic mathematics of cultural destruction. Every Powhatan life saved English lives. Every year of peace allowed English strength to grow. Every diplomatic success made military solutions less viable. The qualities that made Powhatan civilization admirable, generosity, hospitality, willingness to share knowledge, respect for reciprocal relationships, became the very qualities that enabled its destruction. As she held her daughter and prepared to join Opachancanno's war, The friendship she and Amonute had built, beautiful as it was, had been part of this larger pattern. Every moment of cultural bridge building, every success in helping the two peoples understand each other, every gesture of goodwill had contributed to keeping the English alive long enough to become unstoppable. The choice she faced wasn't just about revenge for Amonute's death. It was about whether the cycle of kindness that had doomed her people could finally be broken, even if breaking it meant becoming the kind of person her childhood friend would never have recognized. Now you understand. The choice tomorrow isn't just about personal grief or revenge. It's about the mathematics of survival. Every generation that tried diplomacy, every leader who chose mercy over violence, every friendship that crossed cultural lines had made this moment inevitable. Pocahontas' War represents the last chance to stop a process that began with kindness and will end with genocide unless someone finds the courage to break the pattern. But as you hold your daughter close and remember the girl who cartwheeled by the river, you face an impossible question. Is survival worth becoming someone your dearest friend wouldn't recognize? Is saving your people's future worth destroying the memory of what made your friendship sacred? Tomorrow, when the war party gathers, you'll have to choose between the woman Amonute helped you become and the warrior your people need you to be. Now you understand the forces that destroyed the world you knew as a child. But understanding doesn't heal the wound in your heart or quiet the rage that has burned there for 7 years. You sit in the circle of warriors gathered around Pocahontas' fire, holding your sleeping daughter against your chest. Your son, now 6 years old, leans against your shoulder, too young to understand the weight of the words being spoken, but old enough to sense that something important is happening. Pocahontas stands in the firelight, no longer the young war chief you remember from childhood, but a leader hardened by years of watching his brother's diplomatic efforts fail. His voice carries the authority of someone who has seen too much and learned bitter lessons about the cost of mercy. 7 years ago, he says, his eyes finding yours across the fire, they took Amonute from her family, forced her into marriage with one of their own, paraded her across the great water like a prize they had won in battle. The names of the dead hang in the night air between you. Kokuam, your childhood friend's husband, murdered by English muskets when he tried to rescue his wife. Amonute herself, dead at 21 in a foreign land, having never seen her homeland again. They tell stories about her now, Pocahontas continues, stories that make her into their princess, their convert, their proof that we can be tamed and civilized. They have stolen even her memory. Around the fire, other voices join in with their own losses. Families torn apart, children taken, land seized, promises broken. The English settlements that once seemed so small and desperate now stretch across traditional hunting grounds. The colonists who once begged for corn to survive now demand tribute and submission. Your husband touches your arm gently. "It's time," he whispers, "past time." You look down at your daughter's sleeping face, so peaceful in the firelight. She has Amonute's dark hair, the same stubborn curl that used to escape her hair ornaments when you were children playing by the river. Your son has inherited your own serious eyes, the ones that noticed too much even as a child. "I think of her every day," you find yourself saying, your voice carrying clearly in the quiet circle. "I think of the girl who cartwheeled by the river, who worried about her father's diplomatic missions, who wanted so desperately to build bridges between our peoples." "And what did her bridge building bring her?" asks one of the other warriors. "Death in a foreign land, separated from everything she loved." The fire crackles, sending sparks up into the star-filled sky. Your children sleep against you, trusting your warmth, trusting your protection. Around the circle, you see other parents holding their own sleeping children, other families who have lost loved ones to English expansion. They grow stronger every season, Pocahontas says quietly. More ships, more settlers, more demands for land that has been ours since the beginning of memory. If we wait longer, there will be no chance at all. You know he's right. The educational journey through history that your mind just completed has shown you the mathematics of cultural destruction, Every year of peace has made the English stronger and your people more vulnerable. Every act of kindness has been repaid with demands for more land, more submission, more complete surrender of the world that raised you. March 22nd, Opachansano announces, dawn, coordinated strikes across all the settlements. We end this before they become too strong to stop. The commitment ripples around the circle, heads nodding, hands clasping, the quiet determination of people who have tried every other option and found them all wanting. When the meeting ends and families begin to scatter to their homes, your husband walks beside you in comfortable silence. The children sleep against your shoulders as you make your way through the forest paths you've known since childhood. 7 years of grief, he says finally. Maybe it's time to do something with it. You nod, feeling the weight of decision settling in your chest like a stone. Justice for Amonute, justice for Kokuum, justice for all the promises broken and lives destroyed. But as you settle your children into their sleeping furs, as you watch their peaceful faces in the dying firelight, another voice whispers in your memory. The voice of a girl who once believed that friendship could solve anything, who chose understanding over fear, who died far from home still hoping that love could bridge the gap between worlds. What would she want, not just for her people, but for the children who will inherit whatever world your choices create? The question follows you into restless sleep, and you know that tomorrow's preparations will bring no easy answers. 3 days before the planned attack, you sit with the other women as the final preparations are discussed. What you hear makes your blood turn cold. This isn't the honorable warfare you had imagined. This isn't warriors meeting warriors in open battle, the kind of conflict that follows the old rules about courage and honor. This is something else entirely. They trust us now, one of the war leaders explains with satisfaction. After years of trade and cooperation, they invite us to share breakfast in their homes. Their children play with ours. They show us their fields, their storehouses, their defenses. Your husband nods along with the other men. The element of surprise is complete. They suspect nothing. At dawn, we will be sitting at their tables, another voice continues, sharing their morning meal, and when the signal comes, the horn from across the river, we strike. The details unfold like a nightmare. English families will wake on March 22nd to what they think is another ordinary day of cooperation and trade. They will invite Powhatan neighbors to join them for breakfast, as they have done countless times before. Children will play together while adults discuss the weather and crops and the small daily concerns of people living side by side. And then, at a coordinated signal, the killing will begin. "The children too?" asks one of the younger warriors, uncertainty in his voice. "All of them," comes the firm reply. "This isn't about individual revenge. This is about survival. If we leave their children alive, they grow up to take more of our land." Your own children sleep nearby, and you find yourself watching the rise and fall of their breathing. Your daughter, 5 years old, who laughs exactly the way Amonute used to laugh. Your son, who asks endless questions about everything he sees, just like you did at his age. You try to imagine sitting at an English family's table, sharing food, watching their children play, and then killing them all when a horn sounds across the river. A memory surfaces, sharp and clear. Amonute at 12 years old, visiting the English settlement during one of her diplomatic missions. You had hidden nearby, watching as she played with the English children, teaching them a Powhatan game with small stones. She had been so gentle with them, so patient as they struggled to understand the rules. "They're just children," she had said to you later. "Whatever their parents have done, they're just children who want to play and laugh and feel safe." The voice in your memory is so clear you almost turn to look for her. But there's only the circle of warriors planning systematic slaughter and your own children sleeping peacefully nearby. Some of the settlements have 30 or 40 people, someone is saying. Entire families. The coordinated timing means none can warn the others. Your stomach lurches. This isn't justice for Amanute's death. This is exactly the kind of calculated violence that she spent her short life trying to prevent. You think of all the English children who will wake up on March 22nd thinking it's an ordinary day. Who will eat breakfast with Powhatan friends they trust? Who will never understand why the adults who were laughing with them moments before are suddenly— You can't finish the thought. Your hands are shaking. What about families who have shown kindness? You ask, your voice barely above a whisper. The silence that follows feels heavy with judgment. This isn't the time for sentiment or individual loyalty. This is about survival of your people against an existential threat. There can be no exceptions. Hopakenkano says, gently but firmly, every English family that survives will be the seed of 10 more families. Every child we spare today will take land from our grandchildren tomorrow. The logic is ironclad. The history you just learned proves it. Every act of mercy your people have shown has been repaid with expanded settlements and greater demands. Kindness has been a fatal weakness. But sitting there in the firelight, watching your own children sleep, you realize you cannot be the person who kills children at their breakfast table. You cannot look into the eyes of English mothers and see your own fears reflected there, then end their lives anyway. It doesn't matter that it's logical. It doesn't matter that it's probably necessary for your people's survival. It doesn't matter that English expansion will continue if this coordinated strike fails. You simply cannot become the person this plan requires you to be. The realization settles over you like a weight. Not judgment of others who can make different choices, but clear understanding of your own limits. Whatever Amonute's death demands for justice, it cannot be this. The girl who cartwheeled by the river, who worried about her father's diplomatic missions, who died believing in the possibility of peace. She would not want her memory honored with the blood of children. As the meeting continues around you, as final assignments are given and last preparations discussed, you make your own quiet decision. You will not be at any English table on March 22nd. You will not be part of this coordinated strike, no matter how strategically necessary it might be. Instead, you will take your children and disappear into the forest before dawn. You will become refugees from your own people's war, carrying Amonute's memory into whatever future your choice creates. It may be the wrong choice for your people's survival, but it's the only choice that lets you remain the person your childhood friend helped you become. March 21st passes like any other evening, but you do not sleep. While your family rests, you quietly gather what you can carry: food for several days, warm clothes for the children, fire-making materials, the small treasures that connect you to home. Your husband sleeps deeply, exhausted from 3 days of preparation. Your children rest peacefully, unaware that their world is about to change forever. Just before dawn, you wake them gently. We're going on a journey, you whisper to your son as you help him into his warmest clothes, to visit the old camping places by the northern streams. He accepts this explanation with the trusting simplicity of childhood. Your daughter barely wakes as you wrap her in her favorite blanket. You slip away from the sleeping village as the sky begins to lighten in the east, carrying your daughter and guiding your son along paths you learned as a child. The same paths where you once raced to warn Amonute about English visitors, where you played hide and seek among the winter trees, where you promised to be friends forever. By full daylight, you are deep in the forest, miles from any English settlement, miles from any Powhatan village. Your children think it's an adventure. They help you gather firewood and find a clear stream for water, chattering about the birds they see and the interesting shapes of clouds. You build a small fire in a clearing sheltered by ancient oaks and share out the food you brought. Your children eat with good appetite, happy to be camping under the open sky. Then, carried on the morning wind, you hear it. The sound is distant but unmistakable, the war cry that signals attack, echoing from the direction of the nearest English settlement. Then another, from a different direction. Then the faint sound of musket fire. Your children look up from their meal, curiosity in their eyes. "What's that noise, Mama?" "Just thunder," you tell them, though the sky is clear. "Finish your breakfast." Throughout the morning, the sounds continue. sometimes close enough to make out individual voices, sometimes just a distant rumble that might be wind if you didn't know better. Smoke rises from several directions, dark columns against the blue sky. Your daughter naps against your shoulder, while your son builds elaborate structures with fallen branches. Around midday, you hear voices in the forest. Not war cries this time, but the quiet conversation of people moving carefully through the woods. A family emerges from the trees. Parents about your age, 2 children, carrying bundles and moving with the careful alertness of people who are also fleeing something they cannot bear to be part of. "Sister," the woman calls softly when she sees you, "are you also choosing a different path?" You finish for her. They join you by the fire, and soon other families appear. A small community of people who made the same choice you did, to step away from necessary violence, to preserve something in themselves and their children that warfare would destroy. No one speaks directly about what is happening in the settlements. No one debates whether your choice was right or wrong. There will be time for those conversations later, when the immediate work of survival is finished. Instead, you focus on the practical needs of children and families in the wilderness, sharing food, organizing watch schedules, finding the safest places to sleep, building, even in this temporary refuge, the kind of community that takes care of its most vulnerable members. As evening approaches and you help your children settle near the fire, your son looks up at you with serious eyes. "Mama, will we go home soon?" The question breaks your heart, because you know that the home he remembers may not exist anymore. Whatever happens in the aftermath of this day, the world is changing in ways that cannot be undone. "We'll find our way to where we belong," you tell him. Together. Your daughter, drowsy in your arms, makes the small, contented sounds of a child who feels safe and loved. Around the fire, other families settle into the peaceful routines of bedtime, quiet lullabies, gentle conversations, the soft sounds of children drifting into sleep. You find yourself humming the song Amonute's grandmother used to sing, the one about rivers finding their way to the sea, no matter how many obstacles stood in their path. Your children's breathing grows deep and regular. Firelight surrounded by the quiet sounds of families choosing love over revenge, you tell your children about the girl who used to cartwheel by the river, about her gentle heart and her dream of building bridges between different peoples, about the choice to protect what you love rather than destroy what you hate. "Will I ever meet her?" your daughter asks sleepily. "You carry her with you," you whisper. "In every choice you make to be kind instead of cruel, to build instead of tear down, to love instead of hate. She lives in all the bridges you choose to build." The fire settles into glowing embers. Your children sleep peacefully against you, their small bodies warm and trusting. Around you, other families rest in the safety you've created together. Tomorrow will bring new challenges. There will be consequences for the choice you made, questions about loyalty and survival, and what your children's future will look like in a world where peaceful coexistence has failed. But tonight, you rest in the knowledge that you remained true to the person your dearest friend helped you become. You chose protection over revenge, love over hate, the hard work of preserving life over the terrible simplicity of taking it. As you drift towards sleep, you feel Amonute's presence like a gentle hand on your shoulder. The girl who believed in friendship across impossible divides, who died far from home still hoping for peace, who would want her memory to heal rather than to hurt. In choosing to walk away from necessary violence, you have chosen to carry her true legacy forward, not the Disney princess or the English colonial propaganda, but the real person, the child who cartwheeled by the river and believed that love could bridge any gap. The fire whispers down to embers. Your children breathe softly in your arms, and in the peaceful darkness of the forest, you understand that sometimes the greatest courage is knowing when to step away from the fight, when protecting what matters most means walking a different path than everyone else. Amonute's gentle spirit lives on, not in the stories others tell about her, but in every choice to choose love over hate, understanding over fear, and the patient work of building bridges in a world that seems determined to burn them down. If these stories help you find your own peaceful rest, consider subscribing to Slumber Through Time for more journeys through history's hidden moments. Until next time, sleep well knowing that even in the darkest chapters of history, there were always those who chose compassion over conflict, love over revenge, and the hard work of preserving what makes us human.